Welcome back to Physioplata. I'm your host, Dr. Rod Henderson, alongside my co-host, Dr. Patrick Damrath. And today we're going to talk about the top 3 things that you could do to improve your cardio on the mats.
Okay, let's define what we talk about when we're talking about cardio, because that's such a huge topic again.
Yeah. And you can look at cardio from a lot of different perspectives, but I think one of the ways we're looking at it more in terms of a functional perspective. So how well you can maintain your ability to perform throughout an extended period of time on the mat. So in other words, if you're like at a gym where you've got a 10-round Tuesday, you want to be able to sustain your effort on the first round just as well as you can your 10th round. You don't want your 10th round, your 8th through your 10th round, you're completely drained and completely exhausted. You want to be able to have good, the ability to perform and the ability to recover in between rounds.
Just to be at the best peak performance level for that extended amount of time, not just a short amount of time, but extended rounds, multiple rounds, and all that.
Which is really tricky to do because jiu-jitsu uses so many different energy systems when we train. I mean,
there's different aspects too, right?
Absolutely. So, if you're training in a static position for a relatively long period of time versus if you're scrambling and you're wrestling or if you're engaged in a lot of positional changes, it can really, really vary quite a bit. So we've got to be able to have a plan that incorporates all that variability that we have within a given training session. And so number 1 on the list is to improve your maximal oxygen consumption, your VO2 max. This is, to me, I think you and I both agree that improving your VO2 max or your aerobic capacity has got to be at the top of that list.
Yeah, for me it's number 1, because if you're talking about being able to do multiple rounds, just do one round, right? Because one round is how long? Typically the shortest round you've ever had. I have not had a round that was shorter than maybe 2 or 3 minutes at the shortest. And even then, at that point, obviously we don't want to get too deep into what energy systems you're using, etc. Yeah. But if you're doing anything for 2 minutes, it becomes an endurance exercise. 2 minutes is usually what that means. What do you think?
Yeah. I think, sometimes we do a lot of positional sparring and things like that. Some things that are, close to 45 seconds or a minute, depending on the outcome of the positional drill. But at the same time, when we're talking about sparring, I mean, you're looking at usually minimum. At our gym, we usually run pretty long rounds. So we're at minimum 5-minute rounds, 6-minute rounds. So it's a lot. I mean, it's an extended period of time. And so one of the best things that you can do is have the aerobic capacity, the ability of your heart to actually function and deliver blood to your muscles for an extended period of time. And it's a really cardio, that kind of cardio has gotten a little bit of a bad rap in the bro science world, because we talk about, I want to do cardio. That's anything over 5 reps, and they kind of, we joke about doing cardio. But the ability to take in, utilize, and deliver oxygen to the muscles is a really, really important thing in the sport.
Yeah. And I think exactly the reason what you were just talking about, like that individuality when it comes to training is huge. Like somebody's 5 reps are going to be almost like an endurance for them, because they might be deconditioned. Another person has to do like 10 to 12 reps to be still like in that phase, and then endurance, some need way more, right? So that individuality plays a big role. But when it comes to VO2 max, I think it's pretty standard. Like there's a one, consensus across the board where you got to have it to be able to perform on a activity level that is like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. I mean, it really doesn't hurt to have good baseline level. And I know there's guys, again, kind of in the bro science world, or even sometimes some of the heavier weights, myself included sometimes, where it's like you tend to downplay the importance of cardiovascular training. And I think we do that not only to the risk of our jiu-jitsu, but also the risk of our health in general. So I do think when you do devote some time to developing your cardio, you're not only investing in your jiu-jitsu, you're also investing in your health. And so
Yeah.
I think it's an important thing to be able to do.
Yeah, cardiac output VO2 max, I think, has a direct correlation to longevity and health.
Yep.
Cardiac vascular health.
Yeah, as does strength. I mean, strength is that doesn't, and so it's this kind of classic internet thing. Well, so you're saying strength is not important? No, strength is very important. I'm a huge advocate of strength training and strength, but you've got to also, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, guys. So it's like you can strength train, you can get stronger, you can also build your cardiovascular capacity at the same time. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
So VO2 is probably key. And we'll talk about in future episodes, I think, some ways to improve VO2, some of the best ways to improve VO2. There's a lot of things that we can do. Lots of options there.
What's your favorite way of improving VO2? What's your go-to?
I really love the Echo bike. It's just one of my favorite. So the reason I like it, it's compact. It's in one place. It doesn't put as I love to run. I really enjoy running, or in my case, jogging. But I love to do that. But it's a little bit tougher for me on my knees and my ankles. I used to run a lot more when I was younger, so it's not quite as easy. I just jump on the Echo bike and I do rounds on the Echo bike. And so we do.
It's hard to beat.
It's hard to beat. So I can do my long, slow training. I can do threshold intervals. I can do sprint repeats. I feel like I can address almost any major energy system I want to on the Echo bike. Sucks, but it's a really good energy.
I think it just speaks to how good it is by where it's used. Like everybody uses it now. Yeah. Everybody has it, at least one.
It's pretty cheap too. It's about $750 from Rogue, and there's other ones. There's the Assault bike and stuff like that. There's all kinds of different bike ergometers, but I definitely recommend it. And that plus just I love my kettlebells. Love my kettlebells. Love running, but
kettlebells are really good too.
God, just really, really enjoy kettlebells.
Have you ever used a Bulgarian bag before?
Yeah, I have. I think I used it. I had a friend of mine that used one and said, "Hey, man, give this a shot." There's a little bit of a learning curve to it.
Oh, yeah.
I remember feeling very ill after using it for a little while. It was really tough.
You want to hear my Bulgarian bag story? Yeah. I still have it at home, man. Yeah. It's got very little use because my ego got in the way. I read, the reviews, etc., that stated you should not go heavy on those bags because, there's many movements that you should go light on to, get started. And I don't like that. I don't like going light. I like to go full blast all the time.
Why would you go light?
Why would you go light?
Why would you do that?
So I got a bag that's too heavy, bro. So I can do some things, but not all of that stuff. Like the biggest benefit of the Bulgarian bags are the lifts and the swings and stuff like that. So I got to build my strength up to being able to use that first because it's heavy.
Yeah. I remember how quickly it caught up to me on how tough it was, So I use a very basic kettlebell and the Echo bike.
What do you think of people using swimming to improve their VO2 max?
Oh God, I love it. It's a really great way to improve your VO. Some of the most simple activities, jogging, swimming, biking, they're hard to beat. And so, I know there's lots of fancy ways of getting from point A to point B, and some of them are a little bit more social media, more attractive from a social media standpoint, but really just putting in time on a piece of cardiovascular equipment. Again, bro science, we kind of talk shit about cardio, but it's hard to beat. And so if it's something that you feel like you're not employing regularly, especially if you're not training regularly doing these things, you will notice an immediate improvement in your your endurance on the mats by doing these things.
When it comes to conditioning for the mats, though, I will put swimming a little bit on a lower tier on the list because it don't get me wrong, like you're having to work on your breathing a ton, so that's super helpful in that aspect. But when it comes to moving your body in an unloaded environment like that, I feel like it's a bit more suited for like recovery than it is for actual conditioning training, because when it comes to doing stuff on the mats, I feel like it should be something land-based, just to emulate moving your body through the entire, effect of gravity and different positions. And I feel like you lose that when you're swimming. So I do like it. I wouldn't base my conditioning on it though.
Bro, I will tell you that I am at my most inefficient when I'm swimming.
You are?
I'm a terrible swimmer.
That might just be me then, because I've been, doing the lifeguard thing, been swimming all my life. So it's not as much a deal for me as it is like land-based stuff. Like kettlebell stuff kills me. The Bulgarian bag kills me. Running kills me. I hate running so much.
Really?
Yeah, I hate it.
I actually enjoy it. Of course, I do it so slow. So it's like, it's fine. But I mean, I sprint sometimes. I like to sprint, but most of my running is done at a pretty low pace. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to get this done. But the main thing is just being consistent. 2 to 3 times a week. Just get on a bike.
How long?
You got to start where you are. I mean, for some people, they may go out and get on there for 10 to 15 minutes, and that's it. If you were starting from nothing and you did 10 to 15 minutes on a treadmill at a moderate pace on a treadmill 3 times a week, you're going to see a difference on the mats. If you don't do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how small. It's just like jiu-jitsu. I mean, small differences make a huge, a little change in technique. It's not linear. It equates to a big improvement on the mat. Same thing when you do strength training. When you start strength training, a little bit goes a long way. Cardio is the same way. You don't have to be a cardiovascular monster. You don't have to train for a triathlon. You just need to start picking up some time doing some regular training and then there's a lot of different ways to train for improve VO2 max. There's sprint work, there's steady state, low intensity steady state exercises. Some are a little more effective at improving your VO2 than others, and we can talk about that on another episode. But the main thing is just get started.
Getting started is super important.
Yeah.
And I like that VO2 max, like you said, has this versatility where you can start with something and you can change it.
It's really nice.
And at some point, you kind of have to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, as we get older, VO2 declines naturally with age. So it really is a very important thing to be able to.
You know what?
You're going to say something smart ass.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I'm just confirming or just reiterating what you were saying, because VO2 max is one of those things you can't hide.
No.
You cannot hide from it. You think you go to the gym. Us, man, we love that. On the big weightlifting or the powerlifting, the weights not lying to you. You know what you lifted 2 years ago. You know what you're lifting now, especially if you haven't lifted in a while.
Right.
And you're trying, and that's how we get in trouble. We're trying to get back to those numbers the first day we're lifting again after not working out for months and maybe even longer. But VO2 max is the same thing, and that's hard for some people to value enough. It is, if not more indicative of where your conditioning is than the bench press, than the squat, than the deadlift, all put together almost.
Oh, it really is. Yeah, 100%. I think it's again, for guys, if you go to any gym and you test this, you can test this out for yourself. Go to a gym. Your first thing that you see is you're going to see all the rows of exercise equipment. You're going to see all the cardio. You're going to see most of the time they're occupied primarily by women. You go into the free weight area, you're going to see most of the time, you're going to see the bros. Now, it's changed a little bit over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, but the main way it's changed, I see more women lifting weights,
which is great. And shout out the bros, man. I see the bros on the cardio machines a bit more.
Guys are doing the cardio a little bit more, but generally speaking, guys don't value cardio as much as they should. Just like in general, women don't value strength quite as much as they should, and it's kind of natural. I mean, there's probably a lot of reasons for that, but I do think that improving your VO2, getting on cardio, it's fine. You're not going to sprout ovaries if you're a guy and doing some cardio. It's a good idea.
Yeah, and you're not going to become the Hulk if you're a woman and you're starting to weightlift.
Exactly. That was the old thing.
You're not going to get those arteries popping out, the veins popping out.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you're not going to get that way overnight. No. That's not how it works. But it's whatever. So improving the VO2.
VO2 max.
Important. Number 2. Best way to improve your cardio on the mat is get better technique.
Get better technique.
Stop sucking at jiu-jitsu.
Hey, Rod, how do you get out of a triangle?
Don't get into a triangle.
You heard it here first.
So it's like, it's really, really terrible. It sounds like on its face, it's like, we kind of laugh about it, right? We say, well, hey, coach, how do you get out of a triangle? Well, don't get into a triangle. It's some of the best ways to improve your cardio is to have better technique. So I'll use an example that I saw the other day. I have a friend that I train with, and he's a blue belt, and he was training with an upper belt. And he was just getting his ass tore up by this upper belt, right? He was exhausted at the end of the round. He's breathing heavy and da-da-da-da. He's like, man, my cardio really sucks, man. I'm like, oh yeah, really? I said, okay, well, go get around with, that guy over there. And it was a white belt. Okay. And so I watched him roll with the white belt. And the blue belt, he tore up the white belt. At the end of the round, he was pretty much talking throughout the entire round. I mean, he was not stressed at all. And he tore that guy up. And I said, well, what happened to your cardio there, man? Well, I thought your cardio was bad, man. It wasn't. He's just way better. He was moving more efficiently. He wasn't on the defense the whole time. He wasn't on bottom nearly as much. He was more on top. So, I mean, to me, what counts as cardio in a lot of people's minds is really just you're getting your ass beat. It's like I have great cardio when I'm winning.
On the mats, you mean?
Yeah, for real. Yeah. So it's like I have really good cardio when I'm winning, but when I'm getting my ass whipped, well, I'm breathing hard and life sucks, and
Yeah. There's so many different variables when you're talking about jiu-jitsu and training and conditioning and endurance and having enough air in the lungs, etc. And one simple thing is what you were talking about in the beginning. What position did you spend most of that roll in? If you're on bottom and you have body weight on you, your lungs aren't expanding the same.
Right.
If your frames suck and you have the weight on your chest, you're not going to be breathing the same way. You're not going to get oxygen in the same way. So, and then on top of that, you have a different pace. The speed is so different when you're going against some more skilled guys, or even just guys who have a really good athletic background. So that pace is going to be way different, whether they be white belt, blue belt, or whatever. It's just depending again on the skill level that they have, what they bring to the table. What position are you in? How is the pace? Are you defensive against upper belts the entire time? Are you regulating your anticipatory response as well in the beginning of the match? Because if I'm going against somebody who I know maybe in my weight class, if I know that they're skilled, if I don't want to be embarrassed, especially, my heart is going to be a little bit more elevated in my heart rate, and so I'm going to be a little bit more amped up, so to say. But when I'm going against somebody who I don't have really any concerns about when I'm rolling with them, I am way more chill, way more relaxed. So my heart rate is starting way lower, and then it gets to ramp up if necessary, right? But if it's already up, it's already closer to the ceiling, I can't have as much, recovery from that or relaxation as it continues to go up from that level.
Yep.
So that's another consideration, all these variables.
Yeah. I mean, and being able to regulate yourself, that's one of the biggest differences between white and blue belt. We've all got the experience, or if you're a white belt or if you're a blue belt, you've had experiences with white belts, and they just have that white belt energy. And when we say white belt energy, that just means they're super inefficient. They're really, really ramped up. Their sympathetic nervous system is just going at, total red line. But when you're blue, purple, brown, as you start getting more experience, you're not as stressed. It's not, you're not as stressed emotionally. So it's like, you've been in this position before, hundreds of times. You know how to put frames. You know how to get to where they're not putting pressure on your chest. So like you said, you can breathe. You can oxygenate. Try
to breathe on knee on belly.
Yeah.
See how that goes.
Exactly. It's like if you're putting yourself in a bad position, it's very, very hard to breathe. And that's exactly your opponent's job. So when we're training, my job is to try to make you as uncomfortable as possible. And that's a mistake I often make also, now that you bring it up, because like we call it cooking somebody. Yeah. I don't necessarily always do that. I do like to, if I see the submission I like to go for, obviously it
it succeeds a lot of times, which is why I'm still doing it. But what I should really be doing is I should be cooking somebody. When I'm in top side control, I should be applying enough pressure on their crossface and their chest to make breathing hard, make them tired, carry my weight, knee on belly, transition back down to side control, back and forth a few times without giving up the position. Then you go for the submission, because then they're exhausted or tired or more tired. They will make more mistakes. As compared to when I do go for the submission, I jump into it a little bit faster, and then there's a little bit more fight because they have more energy, and it's harder for me to finish that submission 9 out of 10 times. And so that's something to take into consideration.
Some of the best in the world are just like that. So if you watch Gordon, I remember watching Gordon versus Jacob Couch at Who's Number One a couple months, maybe it was last year. It's been a while since Gordon's competed, but I remember watching that and just watching how miserable it looked. And Jacob Couch is a really, really good competitor, really good brown belt, and Gordon just made his life miserable. Just cooked him, just stayed in mount and just cooked him. And I think eventually, I don't think he smother choked him, but he was very close to, I mean, he just made it so bad for him.
And when you're talking about, sorry to interrupt you, but I want to jump right onto what you were saying. When you're talking about somebody who's not as skilled or advanced in their technical level, and you have somebody who is an upper belt, they already know what they're supposed to do. Like the example of me just giving you that cooking example, they're so heavy, and they could be the lightest person in the world. They're so heavy on you because they know where to be, how to move, where to apply pressure. And that's where you're starting that, route to submission, where you're in trouble by the pressure they're placing on you. You can't move anywhere. You're making mistakes. You're exhausted. Your heart rate is up, and then boom. Over.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I enjoy. There was a time when I was a early blue belt where I didn't like mount that much because I never really felt super secure in mount. But I've really gotten to appreciate the value of the mount position, especially as an older grappler. And when I'm training with someone who's much younger than me, I know that their cardio is going to be probably better than mine. So I've got to, remember the old video games, the old fighter video games where the energy bar goes down. I'm trying to drain their energy as much as possible by cooking them in mount and not really moving a ton, but just making life miserable, making it hard to breathe, making them stress out about whether or not I'm going to isolate an arm or throw in a little punch choke. I mean, it's a fun part of the game for me because I know I'm not going to be able to, I can't roll with you, and I know I'm not going to be more athletic than you. Right? I'm shorter and older than you, so it's going to be tough for me to go, okay, well, I'm going to just scramble with Patrick until he gets tired. That's not going to work. I've got to make use of the assets that I have, which is, to kind of slow things down and make things more inefficient for you, make your life as inefficient and as hard as I can possibly make it. So improving your technique is, to me, I think it's got to be right behind improving your VO2.
I think they go together, but still, VO2 takes the top spot.
All right.
One more thing I want to say on technique is actually being also, or adding awareness, because I'm not ever trying to be a blue belt coach or anything like that, but when I'm going against somebody, when it's upper belts, I don't say anything because I want to take advantage of it. But if it's lower belts, like white belts or the blue belts, and I noticed that they're in top side control or something like that, and they're just breathing like they just ran the hardest sprint of their lifetime. I was like, dude, relax,
Settle down,
you're in dominant position. You're in top position. This is a time to rest for you. This is not the time for you to pass out breathing so fast. You know what I mean? And so I try to give that advice whenever applicable.
Yeah, but you know how excited you are to be a lower belt and to be in a dominant position. It's like, oh my God,
I'll never get back here.
I've waited years for this. It's that one moment you finally get, you get mount and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. And then of course you get rolled.
Yeah.
And then
so when it comes to getting better at technique, how much does breathing play a role to you?
So to me, I think it's one of the most important things that you can learn to do early on. I wish I'd done it earlier. I've been practicing it a whole lot lately, especially in rolling with some of the upper belts, the brown belts and some black belts, and is really trying to, when I get in those bad positions, and I get in bad positions a lot more with the more advanced belts, is just trying to slow down, trying to build frame, and not just slow down my breathing, but make sure I can build a frame to where I can breathe easy, and just taking my time. I've been doing that when I'm stuck on bottom against a higher belt or somebody who's got similar skill level as me, and then also with wrestling. I've really been trying to, because my wrestling is not great, but I've been working a lot more and trying to control my breathing more during wrestling. And so I think breath control is really important. It's most noticeable with the white belts, of course, because they just don't. There's no sense of how to control your breath. But I do think that being able to regulate your breathing. What about you? What do you think?
Did you read that Hickson book, Breathe?
No, I never read it.
It's good, man. You should.
So
it's not like maybe if you think of it as like it's going to give you the answer to jiu-jitsu.
Right.
It won't. It's just a
cool book.
Yeah. But he talks about that, you know?
Yeah, I heard him on it was Jocko's podcast. It was a really good podcast. I like that episode a lot. I like that. So he was talking about breathing a bunch.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that's cool. People I think underestimate the cooking of jiu-jitsu. I think they underestimate what the positions are for, and I do that too, so I'm not taking myself out of that pot, but I think technique is not just having the perfect grip for your heel hook or the perfect setup for your kimura. Technique is valuing where you are, if you are in a bad position, getting out of it with frames like you're saying, or if you're in a good position, just staying there first before you advance, because a lot of times you get a little scramble if they're too energetic and then you advance. But being able to find that timing, you know, that transitional timing, the positional timing and stuff like that, that is, I think, if I had to, I mean, obviously I'm not as experienced in that with the time that I've put in, you know, as compared to others. But if I had to put a percentage on that, I think that's like 70-80% of your submission rate is going to be dependent upon how much you have valued and taken advantage of the dominant positions before your submission. Yeah,
and if you watch some of the instructionals from people like Danaher and Gordon Ryan and even people like in the 10th Planet system, they talk about the value of pinning and the value of having control over your opponent. And it's just... And understanding the mechanics of that. And that really takes a lot of, so if you can really efficiently hold somebody down, it takes the cardio load of that activity and just drops it so much. So it's so big.
You know where I love to use that principle on? In my close guard. When I have close guard on somebody.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works better than other times, depending on how wide a person is, what the diameter is of their thorax. But when I have a good closed guard or grip on somebody's torso, I have a little cheeky thing where I'm trying to extend my legs and pull them together, like adduct my knees to collapse the rib cage a bit, so it makes it a bitch to breathe.
Yeah. I've got a partner that does that. I can see you being able to do that too. That sounds awful.
But you know what? You know where I learned that from, dude? I learned that from this old freaking dentist guy. Dude, he was like half of your weight, probably close to your height, but still smaller. Dude, this guy was he was so skinny, but he was so freaking good with that. And that's what I mean with technique, right? Or that's what I mean with positional control and utilizing this position that you are in. Man, this pressure this guy put into my rib cage, like it just, I don't know, it was like early on, one of the first classes I went to, and I was just freaking upset with the fact that this old freaking guy was giving me the business like that. I mean, I would have, like, if this guy would have cut me off in traffic, dude, I was like, what are you thinking, man? Are you like, are you trying to die right now?
Little guy, man.
But he was like the nicest guy, and he was like so small and applied so much pressure into my rib cage that it left a memory since then, and I've tried to emulate that, and it was just a perfect example of being able to be technical, being able to take advantage of your position and impacting the opponent's breathing.
Yep.
Boom.
Yeah. It's and that's why they talk about, jiu-jitsu sometimes being kind of like a superpower. Jocko calls it that superpower. It's like you're controlling this person with almost no, or relatively very low effort.
Yeah.
And so that's to me, I think that's really, really important.
Shout out to all the old technical guys that are giving the young bucks their business. I didn't mean you, man.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, you get a pass. You get a pass. You're pretty technical.
Right. I'm
with
somewhat,
that leg lock business.
yeah. Shout out Lonnie helping me with my leg locks. Okay, so we got improving your VO2, get better at jiu-jitsu, so improving your technique. So time on the mats is obviously a huge part of that. And then the last one that we talked about before this is being able to vary your training, training variability. To me, I think this is an important thing to discuss because I think the tendency sometimes is, especially when you don't have unlimited training time on the mat, you go at one speed, you go really, really hard, or you may be somebody who goes a little bit more easy, more flowy, and that kind of stuff. But if you're doing just one type of training, if you're not varying your training, then you're really doing your cardio on the mats a disservice.
Yep, and I think jiu-jitsu is the perfect sport or martial art for that principle. You can, like you talked about, change your training variability on the mats in that session. In that one session, you can start by warming up slowly. You can start with some positional rounds that are a little bit shorter, and then you can do your full rounds, and you're going at it right at a much higher clip. And not only that, but you can also change the duration of your sparring. You know, I think that's a good sign of a good training program on the mats is if you have a place that doesn't always do the 6-minute rounds, right? Doesn't always do the 10-minute rounds every time,
right?
Because you're becoming attuned to that to be good at that, and that's fine. But it's not always like that. Like you're not always going to have a match that's going to be 10 minutes long. So being able to change that duration, and that's just one variable, just changing the duration of your sparring or rolling is going to help your conditioning way more. It's going to help your technical level and conditioning for jiu-jitsu a lot more. Your actual ability to sweep somebody, for example, because your pace is different. And then within, let's say, even if you do have like a regular round, even the pace during that round, if you're kind of like, I think it's a sign of a technical, jiu-jitsu practitioners, if they during that round can change that intensity. And that's usually how things are set up really well. Like sweeps, for example, I've noticed that many times that higher or more technical guys will slow into that roll a little bit more. They're feeling you out, and then they're placing you in a certain position, doing a certain angle, and then they go real fast. Boom. And then you got a butterfly sweep, you got a scissor sweep, you got whatever sweep. Yep. And that's really like the way it goes. Or like, for example, with wrestling or takedowns, you're feeling your distance out, you're going a little bit slow. Sometimes you go really faster in the takedowns, even from the get-go, which is fine. But there's that different variable of intensity and speed in that roll. It doesn't just have to be like a set stage. During any particular row, it can go up and down really quite a bit.
Yeah, it can vary a ton. And I mean, changing up the way you do things, changing the way you pace yourself during a match. And I think we all are creatures of habit. My default state when I roll is typically pretty slow. I think I've done that over the years just because most of my partners are younger, they're more athletic. So I'm always thinking, okay, I got to pace myself here. I can't burn out all my energy early on or I'm going to be miserable for the second half of this match. So it's natural. And so I developed a bad habit out of that to where I would start very passive. I was a very I would always be very content to accept half guard, bottom half guard. But against a technically superior opponent, bottom half guard is a very bad place to be. And I found that out a couple weeks ago at Naga. So it's like there's sometimes when I've got to be able to recognize, okay, if I'm training with a guy who's bigger than me, I don't want to be on bottom. I'm going to have to be more assertive with my wrestling. I'm going to have to be more aggressive. I'm going to have to get on top early. I'm going to have to vary up my usual method in order to be to have better endurance, and also it's also good just tactically to practice doing that.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you're going to be, 1 minute left in the match, you're down by 3 points, you're going to have to get a sweep and a pass to win. You've got a minute to do it. You can't play passive at that point. You're going to have to be very aggressive. And if you don't practice that regularly, Yeah, you're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, and that's really geared to competition.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're like allowing somebody to stack up points on you, that's a tough gig, man. You don't. It's nice to change it up a little bit. It's good to be passive, feel somebody out if you have longer rounds, but you have to have both in your arsenal, both sets of tools. And if you've never trained that, you will not have the whatever you didn't train.
Yeah.
And when it comes to a competition, I think that's a very important aspect of your conditioning is how much can you vary your output. And on a good match, you see skilled guys vary their output like frequently. It might start really super fast and then it slows down quite a bit. That's happening a lot in gi matches, right? So you can definitely have that, and you should be able to train your energy system to go in either direction at any given point. And I think that's a very good training tool. I think one of the good things that I know at Revo that we do here is we do normal sparring for a few minutes, 6 minutes. So that's a little bit more paced, right? So you can't expend all your energy right away, otherwise you'll be cooked for the rest of the round. But there's also other times where we're doing first 2 points, much faster pace.
Yeah.
Going, not 100%, but going really hard right away. And then you get to either side gets 2 points, and then it's over with because you can't go at that clip for very long, right? So it teaches you to kind of zap into different energy systems.
Yeah. I mean, playing games like that can be really useful ways of doing it. I remember I was talking to you about this earlier. I remember watching a video. Marcelo put this video out. It's you can look it up on YouTube. It's like called 3 Modes of Training, where he puts a timer on, and I think he's training with his kid. And I think the kid might have been Gianni Grippo. I think if you know who that kid is now, he's really good. I'm pretty sure Grippo's a black belt now, but he's really, really good competitor. But at the time, he was a kid. He was using him as the uke for this demonstration. And there was one round where he sets it for like a minute, and he just goes, nonstop offense is just assaulting this kid, and really, really going after him. And then there was another round where it was a lot more kind of like neutral defensive, just kind of neutralizing what your opponent was doing. And then a third mode where he was completely defensive. And so being able, and of course Marcelo, it's Marcelo, so he's obviously just a great example of how to do things. And he's so good, he can vary he gets to probably choose whenever he wants to be aggressive, or when he wants to be defensive, or when he wants to be neutral. I think practicing that is just as, I'm not qualified enough to say whether it's just as important, but I think working on your technique, but also working on your ability to regulate your intensity during a roll is probably what starts to separate the blues and purples from the browns and the blacks in terms of skill. And so like you can have an older black belt who may not look like they're in the best shape, but still they're going to come away rolling with a purple belt looking like they have really good cardio. Not just because, and maybe they don't have as good of like VO2 max as that other person, but their technique is solid and they know how to regulate their intensity during that match, and that's why they win.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of a car example, like Fast and the Furious. Are you into those movies?
I've seen the first 3. There's more than 3 though, right?
Yeah, there's the 10th one is just out. So
God.
I'm good until like 5-ish.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw the one in
after
Tokyo.
that is like, oh man, come on. Obviously like after Paul Walker, that kind of thing. Yeah. I'm not that into it anymore, but here's what it reminds me of. It's like VO2 max is your gas tank. However much gasoline you can fit into your gas tank, that's your VO2 max. Now you've got these NOS injections. I think it's like laughing gas. I'm not a chemist. Like, you hit the button, the nitrous, and then exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Got it. That is your variability of output, right? Okay. So that's the last point we're talking about. That's how much you can put out at any given time. If you need to put out a lot, that's what you hit. If you back off, you just let go of the gas. Yeah. But whatever you have in your gas tank, your VO2 max dictates how often you can do that or how much you can do that. And then on top of that, you have your technical skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I mean, I think when we talk about cardio, it's obviously not just we just think, I don't know. I think cardio gets misused in terms of what it actually is. Like I said, my blue belt training buddy the other day, I think he may not have had a clear understanding of what cardio is, and understanding what it is and where you need to be working on your mat cardio is important. I think you can do the best for your cardio by improving your actual VO2 max. Was number one. Improving your technical ability, which is time on the mat. I don't think just time on the mat, I think thoughtful time on the mat, making sure you're working on the techniques that are going to be best for you, and really trying to clean things up. I still feel, man, every time someone teaches a class on a triangle, I still feel like I learn a new detail on a triangle. So I always feel like there's room to improve your technique. Even if they're showing the most simple things, you'll pick up a detail that makes your technique better, but that's also a way to make your cardio a little bit better as well.
Yeah, or like just picking up the timing a little bit more.
Yeah, it just makes you more efficient, and when you're more efficient, you're not burning your gas as intensely, and so that improves your cardio.
Yeah,
and then also lastly, being able to vary your training.
Yep, that's a good list on how to improve your cardio on the mats and have better performance. So I think that wraps it up.
It does. Folks, if you like what you're hearing, if you have thoughts about training cardio, some of the things that you're doing on the mats to improve your cardio, some of your experiences, I definitely want to hear about them. We want to hear from you. So please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment whenever you can. And until next time, we appreciate y'all. And we'll see you next time from Physioplata.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you on the next one. Peace.